Welcome back to the channel. Got a video today to show you how to frame interior walls. Several ways you could do this. If you're brave, you could frame it all, lay it out on the ground, nail it up and everything through the ends like you would do a new construction and tip it up. The only problem is if you work in remodels like I do, nothing's ever level and square. So you're working with a floor that might have a little wave to it. You're working with a ceiling that might be a little difference in height. And unless the client, which in this case is my house, and I just want to get it done. Unless you have a client that's like, no, everything has to be perfectly square, level, and the same heights, which a lot of times they would have no idea. And if we're honest, on new builds, there's even those same issues. I choose to put in a toe plate and a top plate and then frame each stud individually, cutting them all because they change a little bit in measurements. So I'm going to show you two ways to do that. One is using a piece of equipment that you may not have or a tool that you may not have, but you probably want to go out and buy because you cannot have enough tools. There's always just that one more tool that you need to complete the job, and I'm going to show you what it is for this project. So I'll show you what I got so far. I'll try not to get you car sick here with the shaking stuff, but I've got a top plate in all the way along here for the top of the wall. Obviously this is another wall coming in perpendicular, and then I've got one down here and one here. Obviously you can see I've got my door painted kind of the orientation just for rough in so I don't forget. It's easy to look at. I always frame my interior walls this way. Just leave the toe plate or bottom plate run long, and then it gives you something to mark on. Then you just cut those out after. So I'll do that here at the end. But the reason I put some of this drywall up now is I wanted to be able to use 12-foot stuff, and I wasn't going to be able to finagle a 12-foot piece of drywall in there once these are all framed. So I wanted to get those on there on the ceiling. This ceiling out here is going to be tongue and groove beadboard, so that's for a different day. But anyway, I'm going to show you two different ways to measure to do these. One is way easier than the other, but requires an extra tool that I will give you a link to as well. That's useful in many different ways. But anyway, so I'm going to show you both options here, and we'll get rolling. One other thing I should show you here that's kind of important is I have already marked out 16 on center where I want or where the studs are going to go. That's kind of important for this. You have to do that down at the bottom. You don't necessarily need to do it at the top, and I'll show you that as we get going. It is going to be a little bit difficult to show you this all in one shot, so I'm just kind of showing you what's at the bottom here. I've just got this walkboard here. These ceilings are about 8'4". So I have normal guy size arms, so I can't quite reach all that from the one thing. So anyway, I'm going to step up on this and show you the first way to do this, the old school way, which still works, and it is a little cheaper, but it takes a little bit of extra work or extra steps. When you measure these, and again, in a remodel, many of these could be different sizes. I mean, hopefully it's not going to change a ton, but it may change, you know, an 1/8 inch here or 1/4 inch. I mean, so you want to cut them as accurate as you can, depending on each stud location. And in my case, this concrete, when they poured it, is a little bit goofy. So it's going to be carpeted, so it's not a big deal for the floor. But basically, you stick your tape measure in the marks down at the bottom that I just showed you, and then I hop up on a step ladder or walkboard so that I can look at this and get a better look at where it's at. So this is 79 3/4. You can do it from the bottom, like if I come down here and set it on my mark and take it up this way. I don't know, my eyeballs, maybe they're not what they used to be, but it's a little bit harder to actually read, okay, what is this actual measurement? Like from here, this looks like it's measured at 98, and if I cut this at 98, this is going to be way too tight. So it's definitely a more accurate measurement if you bring it out to the edge, get up on a step ladder or a step stool or walkboard and get the actual measurement. So we're at 97 3/4. So I'll go ahead and cut this and we'll install it. So I've got my piece cut 97 3/4. One thing I need to mention, I'm gonna try to do this. I don't know if it'll actually work out, but if you look down this board, you can kind of tell, even in this camera, that this board from one end to the other is doing one of these numbers. It's like that quality lumber that you and me get to the privilege of purchasing for a slightly elevated price from what it was several years ago, where the quality is gone the other direction. So you kind of have to work with what you get. So you pick the best ones you could find, knowing that they're going to be a little goofy. But I've been able to make a lot of stuff work. If you get something that's bent more than one direction, don't buy it. It's not worth your time. But generally, if you get something that's bowed, if it's bowed really bad, you can actually cut with the circular saw, cut a little slice out of here, just take a little cut. You can push it back in, put a little shim in there, and you can actually straighten these out. If you're doing tons of walls, you pay a little more, buy number ones or something, and don't, it's going to take forever to do. But for a smaller project, for this, this is a closet, this is going to work just fine. But the key though, is you want to make sure that when I put this up, so right now, you know, I'll draw it on here with a Sharpie so you can see. This is bowing the length of the board, kind of like that, which I realize you can't hardly see because of the glare. There you go. Obviously, it's not that much. Anyway, I want to make sure that I have the bow, or the belly, if you will. So like the belly of the board is matching my belly. I want to make sure that every one of these boards I put on, I make the bellies facing the same way, which for me is going to be facing inward. If you don't do that, that's fine. You're just going to be able to look down your drywall, finished wall, and see a bunch of rippling effect because you didn't take the time to just flip the board one way or the other. So it's worth doing. I would recommend doing it. Especially, this is actually my house. I finally get to work on my own stuff. But I still want it to look good, because the hardest customer I've ever had to please in any project has been the gal that I've chosen to spend my life with. She's a great mother, great wife. I do love her very much, but she'll know. So I'm going to do it correctly. So even though I'm not getting paid for this one. So anyway, we'll go over here and I'll bring the camera in a little closer so you can see what I'm doing. So this is going to be kind of difficult to see the whole thing. It's really almost have to have either a separate cameraman or you need to just be here in person. But anyway, I'll try to show you the best I can. So I've got these marked out already. So I'm going to go ahead and line that one up somewhat close to where I've got it marked, and then just kind of slide it into place at the top. So let me readjust this and show you. Got it in at the bottom. Now I'm just going to kind of tap it over until it looks like it's somewhat straight, because that's what really matters. It's just what it looks like, not if it's actually level. That's a joke. You want to make it level. But right now, level isn't most important. What's most important is at the bottom, I need to get it lined up so I can screw it in. So I'll bring you back down and show you that. So we're back down here at the bottom. My mark where I want this to go is, if you can believe it, is behind here. So I need to move it over just a little. And then I usually do either the finger or the hammer test. You just kind of slide it along. If it's sticking out, pound it back. Just make sure that it's on there square. So you want to carry a square with you. Make sure that you get it lined up good. It's on your mark. And then when I'm doing remodels, I tend to use screws when I'm framing walls like this. The main reason being, if I shoot this at an angle with a nail gun, a lot of times this board moves, and then it gets difficult to move it back and forth. And every time I shoot another nail, it moves a little more. So what I tend to do is take 2 screws on one side, toe-nailed. So you just get it in there far enough that's going to hold it. Then I do the other one on this side. Just enough to hold it. Then I'll toe nail my third one in the center on this side. And so I haven't sunk them in there all the way, but now that I have several screws going in at different spots in different directions, I can go ahead and sink them in there, and the board is going to stay where it's not going to twist, it's not going to move. So I'll show you that. And so we've got that toe nailed in. Let me bring you down here to show you. So I've got my 2 screws here. I got one on each side, and then a third one over on this side. And that's going to keep, obviously, the bottom in there in that toe plate. Again, you can nail it. I tend to use screws because I can kind of screw it in a little bit and adjust the board as need be to keep it square in there. So now I'll show you the next step. So we're screwed in at the bottom. Now I need to make sure that we're level. Again, I didn't measure, the only place I measured 16 on center was the bottom, and I marked that off on the plate. At the top, I don't really, frankly, care if there's 16 on center. If that wall, when it was framed from the outside, if it was done perfect, that's okay. Again, this is a remodel, so I'm just working with what I'm given without ripping the entire rest of the house apart. I'm going to use, this happens to be a 6-foot level, so I use, it's usually what I use the most of. I do have a little longer one for doors, but it's in my job site trailer. Again, this is my house, so I'm just kind of working with the tools that I have here with me. So put that on there, and I'm going to use this level to get this board where I want it to be, which looks like it needs to go this way, just a shade. Well, too far, too much shade. And so that's level right there. Again, you use the hammer test or the finger test at the top or the bottom to make sure that it's where it needs to be. So I'll give it a little tap there, and we're right on. So what I do, this is just me, so you can do it a different way if you want to, that's fine. I usually nail off or screw off all the ones at the bottom first, so I'll go ahead and like cut the next one and do the ones over there, and then I go back at the end and level them all up and screw them at the top. So I told you I was going to show you an easier way to do this where you don't have to go up and down so much. So I'm going to do that now, and that requires this laser, which I have another video on that I can show you, but this is, I'll put a link to it there, and where that video is, and then where you can get this. But it's the Bosch GLM50C, right there. So I've got all these marked. So what I do is go through and measure each one, and go ahead and just cut them all at once, write them down, mark them where they're going to go, cut them, mark those, and bring them and stage them. And I do this all at once. So if you want to be able to be efficient, either you want to get projects done if it's your own, if it's a DIY thing, or if you're doing this and trying to make money, efficiency is key. The least efficient thing you can do is come over here, measure a board, go over to your saw, cut it, bring it back over here, hope that you measured and did it right, put it in at the bottom, level it up, go up to the top and do it, and then do that times, you know, however many you have to do. The best way to do it is get your measurements accurate measurements first. Write them down on a notepad, and then go to your saw, to your cut station, cut them, mark them so you don't forget which one's which, and then bring them and stage them where they go. And then get your drill and get your screw bag, and go through and start putting them all in at the bottom, and then go back with your level and square them all, or not square them all up, level them all up and nail them off at the top. It's going to be a whole lot more efficient. You'll make more money. You'll finish the projects faster. Now, if you don't take accurate measurements, you're going to have a problem. That's where this comes in. So I'm way down here, kind of got you oriented a little different. Hopefully you can catch where we are. This is, right here is the board that I put in last time. So how this works with the laser, so you don't have to keep going up and down on the walkboard and still get accurate measurements. This tool, totally worth it. Again, I go over it in a different video. Check that out. I explain a little bit more about what this can do. But for the cost of it, it's a huge time saver. You turn it on, it's got this little laser that I can point, yeah, right there, blinding you. Anyway, it gives you, it measures length. So I'll go in here and put it on length. Then what I do is I set it right down in the bottom plate. Now it measures from this bottom edge. So you just set it down there, and then you're going to look up and make sure that the laser is actually pointed at the top plate, roughly where you think it's going to go. And so I'll get this and point it up at the top plate where it's going to roughly go. Hit the button again, and that tells me I need to cut this at 8 foot 1 7/8. So remember, I told you you're going to get a little bit of difference between these depending on, you know, if this is a remodel or new build. Most remodels are not all the same measurements. So I'm going to take this. I got my, this is, I think, a Write in the Rain notepad or something, and a Pica pencil. Also have a video on those. This is a cool pencil. Anyway, that's not what this is about. So I'm going to write down 1, because this is board number 1 that I'm doing. I'm going to write 8 foot 1 7/8. So that's number 1. I'm going to mark down here 1. Then I'm going to go to the next one. Do the same thing. So make sure it's up there. Hit the button. Look at that. 8 foot 1 29/32. So that's like probably more accurate than most saws are actually going to cut. 29/32 is just a shade less than 7/8. So I'm going to write a 2. I'm going to write 8 1 7/8, and then what I do, if it's light, I put 7/8 with a minus. That means I'm going to go a little light on it. If it's a little heavy, I do a plus. That means I'm going to do a shade more. Again, my tape measure only goes to 1/16 of an inch. This is telling me 30 seconds. So you could go probably to a 1/16 of an inch and be fine. But anyway, so I'm going to mark there 2. I'm going to go ahead and mark the rest of these out, and then we'll go cut them. Alright, so I got these all cut. They're leaning up here against the wall. The other thing I did when I brought them over from the saw is I looked down on them to make sure I've got the bows going the right way, which if you remember, I said I want all the bellies pointing in. So that's how they're lined up now. So basically from this point, I just take each of them and go set them in place. I screw the bottoms to all of them, and then I go back and screw the tops with the level. So the key is I want 16 on center. As long as I do that at the bottom and put them in level, the top's going to work out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in and screw them off at the bottom, and then we'll level them up and do the top. All right, so they are all in. You can see I got those. Obviously, I started with my king and jack studs for the door already done. So I've got this wall all framed up. I just got to put in the header and pull the electric, and it'll be ready for drywall. So real time, I know I showed you two different ways, but once I switched to the laser, real time to actually measure those, mark them, lay them out, cut them, bring them back, set them in, screw them at the bottom, level the top, and screw the top. I think real time was about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes for the whole thing. So, you know, it's a remodel. If you're building new and you don't have a ceiling above it, I've never been good at framing the wall on the ground and then tipping it up, because there's such a difference sometimes in these at the floor and the ceiling. So anyway, I hope that video helps you. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I think I'm supposed to ask you to subscribe and stuff. So do that too, please, if you would like. Anyway, thanks for watching.